This weekend's biggest fight that you could have taken from a time machine in 2016, a strawweight, we have Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She's taking on Jessica Penne, a couple of former title challengers at 115. For Jessica Penne, she got put on a poster when she took on Joanna Jędrzejczyk. For Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I'd say she gave a better account of herself than Penne did, but regardless, they both lost. And for both of these two fighters, Jessica Penne had a crazy long layoff between fights. She took on Danielle Taylor years ago. She was on a 3-fight losing streak, since she fought for the title. Then ultimately, a long time away, comes back in, takes on Lupita Godinez, the Mexican-Canadian, lost the fight, but the judges gave it to her anyway, so now we're here, Matt. And that fight was earlier on this year. She kind of just held position. It was reminiscent of when Yana Kunitskaya took on Yulia Stolyarenko. Except for Penne, a few of those positions up against the cage were at least offensive enough. For Karolina Kowalkiewicz, she's on a 4-fight losing streak, and she's kind of taken on the moniker of Darren Elkins, because it has been the damage. I added up the total strikes against her in her fights. It's absolutely insane. 441 to 245 against. That's bad. That's really, really bad. And the last two fights are the worst. 163 to 92 and 157 to 51. It's not good. After her last fight, she had to get a titanium plate in her face. And it looked like that was going to be it. I mean, even before the fight, she was hinting at retirement. She said, my partner kind of wants to start to have kids. I'm giving myself a cap of maybe 3-4 years, if that. Well, it's been what? A year and a number of months since. It's been a year and 4 months since her last fight against Yan Xiaonan. The saving grace is all 4 of the losses, top flight competition at 115. So she does have that. But we haven't seen her it's been a minute, and there's a lot of damage.
It's like if I played one-on-one against like Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Giannis, lost to all of them, but it was like, hey, they were still good. If you lose 21-0, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And that's the problem for Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm actually happy you brought up that stat about the damage that she's taken in her career, because that was one of the first things I thought about when I looked at this matchup. These are two ladies who have taken an uncharacteristic or an uncommon amount of damage for this weight class. Karolina Kowalkiewicz got lit up and ate hundreds of strikes against Joanna. Now, yes, there was some give and some taken. She did make good account of herself, all things considered, but she still ate a lot of shots in that fight. She got flatlined by Jessica Andrade, which isn't good for your health. And then in her last 2 fights, has just been consistently outstruck and outcontrolled. And that's the weird thing for Karolina Kowalkiewicz. If she was in there with a wrestler, like I remember the Claudia Gadelha fight back at UFC 212, and it was like, okay, it's very much a clash of styles. You got the jiu-jitsu of Gadelha versus the striking of Karolina. Karolina gets submitted, and I remember after that fight, even the commentary was like, well, that's not a big deal. She'll still be able to outstrike a lot of the women in this division. It was just, a weird stylistic matchup for her. And then you start to see her get outstruck in most of her fights. And that's the weird thing about Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I still think she has decent Muay Thai, and her comp to any other fighter would probably be Joanne Calderwood. She loves that plum clinch. She loves throwing the elbows. She loves throwing the knees. Is the damage always there with them? Not necessarily, but it's still a heavily dominant position. Even go back and watch the Felice Herrick fight that Karolina Kowalkiewicz had. Again, we got to go back for that fight, but still, she gets her that plum clinch and just hammers her with elbows over and over and over again. And I'm pretty sure that was scored a split decision, but upon further review, she definitely wins that fight. Like, it was one of the more dominant showings that she had in the UFC, and at least personally, I felt like that was her back on track fight. It was okay. You've lost, but you've come back. We're going to see a different version of Karolina. She was just never really able to put things together after that, and it really has been a story of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I don't want to make this about Brendan Schaub, like, hey, how do you think you do wrestling Cain Velasquez? I think I do pretty well. I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd F him up. With Karolina, I do think that, okay, when you do have questions of, what am I going to do after fighting? Do I want to have a family? Like, am I going to be done doing this? Has the damage taken its toll? Then I think it's time to probably stop fighting. This isn't a sport where you want to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You could be a Udonis Haslem in the NBA and just be a culture guy on the bench and pick up a paycheck.
And get kicked out at the end of the season?
Yeah, but that's cool, because that's what Udonis Haslem does. With Karolina, unless you go into coaching, there's not a lot of non-contact ways to be involved with this sport. And with Jessica Penne, the weird thing is, I don't really know what she can do to go out there and beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz in this fight. Like, this fight's not proving a thing about either one of these fighters. This is like Ken Shamrock versus Royce Gracie for the strawweight division, but this is like the Bellator version of that fight, because Jessica Penne is not nearly the fighter that she was when she did fight for the title, and the same must be said for Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
For Jessica Penne, her heyday was about 8 or 9 years ago with Invicta. She was a former Invicta atomweight champ. She ended up losing to Michelle Watterson, then she ended up on The Ultimate Fighter. had a fight of the year against Randa Markos. And here's the crazy thing. Both of these women have fought Randa Markos. For Karolina Kowalkiewicz, she used to have great takedown defense, and that's how we want to relay this with Markos. I wrote this one down. Markos went 1 of 9 takedown attempts against Kowalkiewicz. That's pretty good. Heather Jo Clark went 0 of 15.
Heather Jo Clark wasn't good.
And then you had Namajunas in a great fight, who went 2 of 6, and the takedown defense of Kowalkiewicz was great. That's why I think you relayed into this fight, because it's not like it's been tested nearly as much, but she got absolutely dominated everywhere by Yan Xiaonan, who's of the nth degree. I know she didn't look great in her last fight against Carla Esparza, but it still has to be said. Yan Xiaonan's a good fighter. You have one loss, you're still a good fighter.
Calm down a little bit, though.
But she beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz in every aspect. For me, Jessica Penne, well, what's her bread and butter? To strike, to get it down.
Go like this like 1,000 times.
And then I'm going to get you down. She had that weird USADA suspension. She was away for 3 years and 11 months. She did have a Danielle Taylor loss, which again, you're talking about pitter-patter strikers. Danielle Taylor, that's exactly. She just sticks there behind the jab and walks around the outside. Kind of like, Zaruk Adashev at the end of a fight. But for Jessica Penne, her last time against Lupita Godinez, at least she went for it. Now, I talked about the fact that I didn't think she won that fight. I had to write it down. 11 of the people that voted at MMA decisions had it 29-28 for Godinez. 6 of them had it 29-28 for Penne. I'm still of the camp that I thought that Godinez won the fight.
The fact that you're so outraged about it is ridiculous, though.
But it doesn't matter here. So, Matt, we've got Kowalkiewicz, whose last fight was February of 2020, where she got mopped. We have Jessica Penne, who somewhat, I guess, it was controversially won her last fight. Let's have a look at the odds. Karolina Kowalkiewicz opened a -180. She's -123 right now. Penne opened a +155. She's a +100 underdog right now. They're getting close. Tapology votes, 882 total votes, 74% Kowalkiewicz, 91% of them have her to win by decision. For the 26% that have Penne, 85% by decision. The over 2.5, or fight goes the distance, and I don't care about those votes, is my pick for this one. But I want to get your idea. Who do you think is going to win at the end of the day?
Well, of course there's not going to be a finish in this, Craig, so I'll also just say that's my pick, too. I think Karolina Kowalkiewicz is more likely to win this fight because at least the takedowns of Jessica Penne aren't that forceful. It is a lot of head and arm throws, and this fight will be primarily contested in the clinch, and that's where Karolina gets a lot of her good damage off from. And I know her plum clinch isn't like Anderson Silva. She's not getting knockouts with it, but it's by far I guess it's just how she gets her best volume off, and she does throw a lot of good knees, a lot of good elbows at the middle with it. I will say Karolina Kowalkiewicz ever so slightly for an actual pick, but yeah, if I can just say over 2.5 rounds, that's the pick.
Karolina Kowalkiewicz training in Lodz, Poland with one Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and they've been training together for some time, getting ready for this one. For Jessica Penne, she trains with a teammate that's on this card, and Angela Hill out of Alliance, and in around San Diego, you get to train with the Alimale McFarlands and the rest. So I like Penne in this fight. I think the takedown's going to be the major bone of contention. And for Kowalkiewicz, again, is the plum clinch Anderson Silva level, or is it Ben Saunders level? We'll find out this weekend. But for me, I'll take the fighter that's at least been active this year in Jessica Penne. I think if she gets the fight down to the mat, she's more than enough adept at least keeping that top pressure and that top control. But again, this fight's going to a decision, so take that for what it's worth. I've got Penne, you've got Kowalkiewicz. It's a weird bucket of muscles type of fight, but I'll tell you what isn't. Our main event at heavyweight, you've got an interim strap on the line. Those fights usually deliver, right? Lewis taking on Gane, so you're not going to want to miss that. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.